Okay, we are on Yud Gimel Amar Aleph. We are on 13a. Morning, Jaime.
Morning, Rabbi.
Morning. We're on 13a2 or 13a. Yeah, 13a2 on the right side. Amar Rav Chisda. Comes Rav Chisda. Everyone have it? The right column. You know, we had the Gemara. The Gemara said before that if you take an item, if you take a hyssop, and you take an item and you wrap it. If you wrap something, the Gemara says, and you tie one item, tying one item is not considered a tie. The Gemara said, because it's one item. The question is, what? Right. So Rashi. So there's a question. What does the Gemara refer to? That's a great question. So some commentators understand the Gemara. Rashi understands the Gemara is referring to both regarding Succah and both regarding the hyssop. The Succah of the Sukkah, we said earlier that you cannot bundle together pieces of wood and place it on top of a Sukkah. And if you bundle pieces together and you place it on top of the Sukkah, it's not midrabanan. The Rabbanan say you cannot use bundles of wood together for Sukkah. And we said the concern was, the Gemara said, good morning, Mr. Ajmi. The Gemara said earlier that if you take a bundle of wood and you throw it onto your Sukkah for Sukkah as a cover, we're afraid that maybe you will find a hut that you had made earlier, let's say in the summer, where you placed bundles to dry. And you didn't place it for the purpose of protection from the sun, just to dry. And that's not kosher schach. And the rabbis made a gzera. The rabbi said, if you're going to allow to use a bundle, to place a bundle of wood on top of a sukkah, maybe you're going to use a pre-made sukkah that the bundles will place for, not for the purpose of shade, but for the purpose of drying out, which would be a problem. So the Gemara said you can't use bundles. Now the Gemara, according to Rashi, the Gemara is identifying how many pieces of wood together is called a bundle. The Gemara says if you tie one piece of wood together, that's not a bundle. If you tie three pieces of wood together, the Gemara says that would be a bundle. And two pieces of wood, the Gemara is going to say, is a matter of a machlokas. Good morning, is a matter of dispute. That's what the Gemara is saying according to Rashi. And similarly, in a place where you need a bundle, let's say when you go ahead and you sprinkle the ashes of the paraduma, of the red cow, that you go ahead and you slaughter and you burn and you make this waters that you mix with the ashes of the paraduma and you sprinkle on somebody who was contaminated by a dead person. The thing that you use to sprinkle, you take a bundle of hyssop, you dip it into the waters of the paraduma, the ashes that's mixed with the natural spring water that's mixed together, and you sprinkle it on. So what you're using, sometimes you use it's like the brush or something that you use to sprinkle the ashes on the water onto the person, the water of the paraduma, and that is a bundle. We learn out that there has to be a bundle of hyssop. Just like the Jewish people used a bundle of hyssop when they slaughtered the Korban Pesach, the Pesach offering, before they left Egypt, they slaughtered the Pesach offering and they took a bundle of hyssop, they dipped it into the blood and they placed it onto the doorpost. So too, we need to take the hyssop, a bundle of hyssop, and we learn that also needs to be a bundle. But the question is, what's the bundle of hyssop? How many pieces of hyssop is called a bundle? So that's what our Gemara is going to discuss. There are those that learn that our Gemara is only talking about the hyssop, what's called a bundle of hyssop. But when it comes to wood, Three would not be a bundle by wood. We need 25 pieces to be a bundle, which is the major, which seems to be the halachic opinion, which we could research a little more. But Rashi learns, our Gemara is talking about, understands that even by wood, 3 pieces, the Gemara is also discussing by wood, how many pieces of wood together would be a bundle. And if it's called a bundle, that's what you can't put on top of your sukkah. You can't put a bundle of one on top of your sukkah. Good morning, Max. So that is the issue at hand. Everybody have it clear what's going on over here? We're trying to identify what's called a bundle. How many pieces are called a bundle? In the commentary, the question is, are we referring to a bundle by sukkah as well as a bundle by hyssop? Or we're specifically talking about a bundle of hyssop? We're not talking about the bundle of wood by sukkah. That is the discussion. So let's see the Gemara. So the Gemara says the following. Amar Rav Chisda. Iged bechad lo shmei eged. If you're binding around a single object, meaning if you tie one item, that's not called a bundle. The fact that, might look like a bundle in some sense that it's tied. Tying something does not make a bundle. You tie one cup, put a string around the cup. It's not called a bundle because it's only one, right? So that's going to be the question. What's with 2? So the Gemara says, first the Gemara tells us what's clear without any argument. What's clear is tying around one item, max on 13.8.2, is not a bundle. But shalosh shmei eged. But if you tie around 3 items, there's no question, that is a bundle. But now the Gemara is saying shel shnayim. If you tie 2 items, if you tie 2 items together, is that considered a bundle or not? So the Gemara says that's a machlokes Rabbi Yossi v'Rabbanan. That's a dispute between Rabbi Yossi and the Rabbanan. Now, Rashi's pshat, that Rashi extends this question even regarding the schach, with the language of the Gemara does flow very well with Rashi, because the Gemara earlier stated the idea of tying something around one item. The Gemara says, the Gemara before was referring to schach. In context of schach, the Gemara said, let's say you had, remember the bottom of the palm tree, there's all these shoots that come out together, like a mop head, we said, it's all tied naturally together. The Torah connected it together, meaning the Hashem made it naturally. It was not man-made together. And the Gemara said that even if you yourself would go ahead and subsequently tie them together, but it's only one piece. It's only being that it was already tied from heaven. Hashem made it that way. You didn't. So that the Gemara referred to it eged b'chad. You only tied one piece because it came out as one piece. Naturally, it was one piece, and that the Gemara called tying one piece. And it would seem that now the Gemara is continuing, and the subject there was the subject of schach. Therefore, Rashi understands that the Gemara is also referring to schach. Okay, so the Gemara says, here we have a Mishnah. Now, if we have a question, what's called a bundle? So let's look, do we have any precedent on that we found a case that could teach us what's called a bundle? So the Gemara says we have a Mishnah. Where's the Mishnah? My Mishnah Mesechus Torah. Ditnan. It's a machlokes of Yossi Rabbanan. Mitzvat ezov. There's a mitzvah of using ezov, this hyssop grass, to dip into the ashes of the parah adumah. And shlosha kalachim. What did they use for the dipping in to the parah adumah? They used 3 kalachim. They used 3. Rashi refers to it as like 3 roots you had the root of the hyssop plant, and each root has a stem in each root, and you need to have. So this first opinion says you take 3 roots, and you go ahead and you have 3 stems coming out from each root. The way they translate it here in the art scroll on the bottom, they say the kelach is a full plant, which may contain many. So you need 3 full plants of the hyssop, together with, it has a central stalk, and you go ahead and you take 3 of those plants and 3 of their stalks, and you dip it into the ashes of the paraduma. Good morning, Mr. Adjui. So you're going to take, so you're going to be tying together these 3 different plants that they're separate, and you take 3 of them, and you take three of the plants together with three of their stems, which those stems, which he says the stalk, which contains the seed. Okay, so you have those things. That's the hyssop. Reb Yossi Omer, mitzvahs ezov shlosha givolim. He says he doesn't talk about taking the plant, taking the roots. He just says you have to just take three stalks, or the 3 stems, which contain that part of the. See, they say it's the central stalk on whose tip the capsule containing the seeds grow. That's the 3 things you need to take. So whether you need to take the plant plus the stem, or do you need to go ahead and take just the stem itself? So that seems to be a dispute between the 2 rabbis. But everybody over here says, the first opinion says you need to have 3 of the plant and 3 of the stems. And another rabbi only says you go ahead and you take only the stems. Now, Ushiyorav Shnayim, the second rabbi says that as long, if one of the stems fall out from this, you started with 3 stems, and now you're left with 2 stems, the bundle is still considered a bundle, okay? How many stems you have to start with? 3. You bundle 3 together. And then what happened? During use, one falls out, it's still considered a bundle. You might be able to use more than 3. It might be just a minimum to have a bundle. It's not clear here, but you can't. Very good. So you can't start lechatchila. You definitely have to start with 3 stems. That's point 1, and the Gemara is going to analyze the dispute in a moment. The next statement, the Gemara says, "V'gaduma of koshehu." These 2 that are left, you don't need to have the whole stem left, because through use, some of it falls off. It's soft, Rashi says. So through use, some of the parts of the stem fall off. As long as there's something left, it's kosher. As long as you have a piece of the grass left, it's considered as if the whole piece of grass is there. So now we have 2 opinions. Opinion number 1, just the first opinion in the Mishnah talks about having the 3 roots, the 3 plants with the 3 stems. He doesn't talk about having anything left over. If you're left over with 2, you're good enough. The second opinion says, by the way, you have 3, but if you're left over with 2, you're good. So now, how do we understand, what does the first opinion hold? Regarding if you're left over with 2, would it be good or not good? The second opinion, also, what does the second opinion hold? The fact that the second opinion says if you're left over with 2, you're good. Well, what would he hold if you start with two? Excuse me. If you start with two, would he allow you to start with two after the fact? Meaning, everybody agrees you're supposed to start with three. There's no question. You're supposed to have three of these grasses, three of these stems. But the question is, if what you went ahead and you started with two, would it be valid? Would it work or not? So Kasalka Daitach, so the Gemara says, the people in the yeshiva thought the following. Midishiyorav Shnayim. The fact that he said, if you're left with two, you started with three, if you're left with two, it is still kosher. That means you're saying two is a bundle. Because you started with three. You're left with two, and you still say you're good. It still fulfills the requirement of a bundle of hyssop. So what about if you didn't start with three? He will also say you're good, because it's still a bundle. You did not do it the way you're supposed to do it. There is the ideal way to do things in life, and then there's the not ideal way to do things in life. I once had a story. I was in the shul in Baltimore. Good morning, Mr. Silverman.
Morning, Rabbi.
And one of the Agudah of Baltimore, they made an announcement. It was Shabbat of Yom Tov. It was the Yom Tov of Sukkot. And he said that Suda Shlishit cannot be eaten after a certain time. Because let's say if Shabbat is Yom Tov, and that night is also Yom Tov, Saturday night, most of Shabbat is also Yom Tov. So they're telling you, excuse me, you have to be careful. You don't want to start a meal very late in the afternoon, because then you're not going to have a proper appetite for the meal, for the Yom Tov meal, right? So therefore they made an announcement. You have to be, Suda Shlishit cannot be eaten after, let's say, 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Let's say 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Let's say I'm giving you time, because morning Morris, because you're not going to have an appetite for the Yom Tov meal, right? You're supposed to have an appetite for Shabbat meal, for Yom Tov meal. So I went over to the rabbi and I said to the rabbi, they made, let's say the Gabbai made the announcement. I don't know if I went over to the Gabbai. First, I don't know who I went over to first. I said to the rabbi, but we all, if a person did not have Suda Shlishit by 4 o'clock, whatever that time is, the ideal time, but still, he's still supposed to have their Suda Shlishit even at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, a small meal, as long as he doesn't overdo it, technically, that's what he's supposed to do. If he didn't stop and have the meal or the sushi shit early in such a day, he would have it at 5, 6 o'clock. So my point was, if they make such an announcement, person might say, I can't, it's over. If I didn't do the sushi shit by 4 o'clock, it's over. So he said, we are lechatchila Jews. We do things the ideal way. Therefore, we announce sushi shit has to be, it's supposed to be done by this time. It's true that if you didn't do it by that time, you should do it afterwards. But that's why I still might disagree in the way, I might have a different approach, because I might be concerned that people might still make a mistake, think they can't do it after that. But that's the bottom line. So there's a chatchila. There's a way to do things, and then there's sometimes people don't do it in the ideal fashion. The fact that Rabbi Yossi says that if you have 2 stems of hyssop left, it's kosher to use, would seem to indicate you could even, if you went ahead and you started with 2, you never had 3 to begin with. You never tied 3 stems of hyssop together. It also should be a bundle. Because if 2 works, if it's left, the logic means that you're saying it's still a bundle. If it's a bundle after the fact, that after you started with 3 and 1 fell out, it's still considered a bundle. So if you went ahead and you started with 2, it's also a bundle. You didn't do it the ideal way, right? That's what the Gemara is thinking. Good morning, Yosef.
Good morning, Rabbi.
One opinion, correct. The other opinion would seem to say, no, it's 3 3 all the way. If you have to start with 3, even if it falls out, it has to still be 3 stems of hyssop tied together. So the Gemara
Just
says,
as a side note, the fact that we use 2 aravot, I know we use 3 hadassim, but the 2 aravot represents the lips. But maybe the 2 aravot is coming to also teach you to have a bundle. You need 2 minimum.
but the Torah never required a bundle of aravot. The Torah required a
Right.
bundle of hyssop. So so therefore we don't need to have a bundle by aravot.
Right.
We need to have a
Okay.
bundle by hyssop. So the Gemara says, "Kasal kadaita," we thought midishiyarav shnayim. The fact that if you're left with 2, it would be kosher. Quote Rabbi Yossi, "Tchilato namishnayim." If you began to begin with, you never started with 3. If you began with 2, b'di'eved, mean you didn't do what you were supposed to do, it would also work. V'hai detani shlosha. And why did you say 3 lemitzvah? It's a mitzvah. Just like it's a mitzvah not to eat Suda Shlishit later in the afternoon when the Saturday night is Yom Tov. You shouldn't eat Suda Shlishit late in the afternoon. So too, it's a mitzvah to start with 3. But if you went with 2, if you started with 2, it's still good. Rabbi Yossi Shlosha lemitzvah. Mr. Silverman, you have the Gemara. And you'd give Alam and Aleph. Rabbi Yossi Shlosha lemitzvah. And since Rabbi Yossi says 3 is lechatchila, it's ideal to do 3, but you would work with 2 at the end. The Rabbanan Shlosha la'akev. The Rabbanan would hold that 3 is ma'akev. What does ma'akev mean? It holds you back from fulfilling the mitzvah. If you don't have 3, you do not get credit at all for the mitzvah. So what do we see from here? So we see from here that it seems that they're arguing on how much is called a bundle. Is 2 a bundle or 3 a bundle? One rabbi says, at the end of the day, if you had 2, it's still good. It's still considered a bundle. It still meets the requirements of a bundle. And the other rabbi says, no. 2 does not consider a bundle. Right. So here the Gemara is talking about the hyssop. The Mishnah is talking about hyssop. How many is considered a bundle? And it's a matter of a question: would that same dispute that applies to hyssop, would that apply by schach, or schach would be its own category? Maybe a bundle. To be a bundle by schach, you need 25 pieces, or also that's how some understand. Different items bundles might be considered differently. What's called a bundle by different things, because the reason for the Yerushalmi that says Sukkah to be considered a bundle, you need 25 pieces, because 25 pieces is usually the minimum amount that people would bind together to store away to dry. Being that that's the case, our whole concern of the rabbis to protect that a person should not sit in a sukkah that it was made to dry, that the ceiling, that the wood was placed to dry, would only be a real concern if it's a bundle of 25 pieces. Because that's the amount of pieces that it's common that people would place to dry. But if it's a bundle less than 25 pieces, since it's not common to put that amount on top of a hut dry, so we don't need to be concerned for that type of. You hear that, Mark? Yeah. That's the reason behind that opinion. That's why a bundle, there'll be a different amount to make a bundle over there. So now the Gemara says, the Gemara now challenges what we just said. The Gemara now challenges our understanding in the dispute in this Mishnah regarding who says what in the Hyssop. Why? The Gemara says the way we lined it up, it comes out that Rabbi Yossi is more lenient, and the Rabbanan are more strict. The Rabbanan say you must have 3 stems in this. So according to Rashi, this would also be Sukkah. Good morning, Jake. Would have the same law as the Hyssop. Whoever says 2 pieces, 2 stems is considered a bundle for Hyssop, will consider two pieces of wood will be considered a bundle for Succah, and we invalid to place 2 pieces of wood tied together. That's called a bundle. And the opinion that says by Hyssop, only 3 would be really considered a bundle. 2 would not be considered a bundle, meaning you can't sprinkle the ashes of paraduma if you have less than 3, because it doesn't fulfill the requirement of a bundle. The Torah wants a bundle of Hyssop. So too, to be considered a bundle of Succah is only 3. And if you have 2, that's not called a bundle. 25, right? That's the 25 understands that this Gemara, when it talks about a bundle, is specific. When it talks about 2 or 3, it's specific to the category of Hyssop. But this Gemara is not discussing a bundle for Succah. According to Tosfos, this Gemara has nothing to do with what's called a bundle of Succah. A bundle of Succah has its own rules, own numbers. So Tosfos says their opinions exactly. The opinions of this Mishnah regarding Hyssop, what's called a bundle, it does not apply to Succah. Succah, it works with a different number. It's a different category, different case, as Mr. Haber likes to say a lot. Different case, different law, different reasons. Sometimes cases could be different and they could be the same law. Sometimes cases could be different, there's different law. Apples, oranges. One's an apple, one's an orange. Different case, but you still say the same bracha. You don't make a different bracha for an apple or an orange. You say the bar page. But sometimes you have an apple and you have a cantaloupe. One's an 8 and one cantaloupe has dama. Different case, the other law is different. Sometimes the change of case creates a different law or not. So that's right. So we're saying, so that's what Mr. Mark is also discussing. Right, because it's a total different case. 2 and 3 that Al Gemara is discussing is limited, specific, according to that opinion, it's talking about Hyssop, what's called a bundle of Hyssop to use to sprinkle the dip into the ashes of the paraduma. A bundle of Succah is a different story. So Rashi is saying it's exactly talking both about Hyssop and Succah. It's all the same. Rashi groups it all into, it's the same ruling applies by a bundle. If it's a bundle there, that's what's called. What's that? When the Gemara talks about a bundle of Hyssop, the number 2 or 3 it refers to Hyssop, it refers to Succah. Same law, no difference. Right, so, right. So that's a Rashi. See,
18, 16, 14, 13, all are not a bundle.
no, it's not a bundle because people don't store away. You're not in the woods. Rashi would say 3 is a bundle. 3 is a bundle. 3 and up is a bundle. According to Tosfos, Yerushalmi, that's 25. You're good. It's not considered a bundle for our concerns. In our situation, we talk about a bundle of Succah. That's not our concern. I think we hold like Tosfos. We can take out the halacha, but I think we hold like Tosfos at 25. You need 25 pieces. Maybe tomorrow we'll take out the Shulchan Aruch. We'll look at the Shulchan Aruch. We'll take out the Shulchan Aruch. I think 25 is okay. You need 20. You need 25. You need 25 to be considered a right. You can't put 25. You can't put 25 on top. If you put 25 on top, that would be considered a bundle. If you because maybe if you use this type, then a person who might have already placed to dry, he might come to use that type of sukkah. If you want to look, if everybody wants to look back on Yud Beis Dam and Aleph, 12a, look at the bottom Tosfot on Yud Beis Dam and Aleph. You see the Tosfot Chavili Zradin. See the last Tosfos? He says Mefaresh b'Yerushalmi. He says it's explained in the Yerushalmi. Everyone got it? 12a, 12a3. The bottom, but the last Tosfot, Chavili Zradin. Mark, you have it? So he says Mefaresh b'Yerushalmi. He says Mefarish b'Yerushalmi te'ein chavila pechuta me'esrim v'chamisha konim. A bundle is not less than 25 reeds. Good morning, Mr. Batesh. So that's the Yerushalmi. Okay, back to our Gemara, back on Yud Gimel Amud Aleph. Now the Gemara is going to challenge our understanding of which rabbi is more. It says a bundle is 3, and which rabbi says the bundle is 2. Look what the Gemara says. V'hatanya. We learned in a Braita. Rabbi Yossi Omer. Rabbi Yossi says, Azov, if you have this hyssop, this is a special grass that you use to dip into the ashes of the paraduma to sprinkle on the person. Chiloso shnayim. If you began with 2, you only had 2 stems of hyssop tied together. You started with 2, it's no good. Shiyarav echad. Similarly, even if you began with 3, but if at the end of the day 2 fell, if 2 fell and you're left with 1, now that 1 cannot be used anymore. You need a minimum of 2 to be left when you started with 3. Now, pasul, that will be pasul. You need 3 stems to start. If you started with 2, it doesn't work. And you need not only 3 stems to start, you need a minimum of 2 to be left after you started. One of the stems fell out, you're left with 2, it's still kosher. The ain't kosher, and it's not kosher, tchilato shlosha. You must have, the beginning has to start with 3, and v'shiyora of shnayim. So the Gemara understood, again, Rabbi Yossi, the Gemara understood that he said, lechatchila 3, but if you started with 2, it's good. Correct. But he said, exactly. But if you started with 2, exactly. That's the change. That's what the Gemara is challenging. We see here that Rabbi Yossi says you need to start with 3. If you don't start with 3, it's no good. You can't start with 2. So the Gemara says, so now we have, right. So the Gemara this is different than what we understood before. So we understood before that Rabbi Yossi says that if at the end of the day you only started with 2, it is good. And here we see that Rabbi Yossi says, no, you can't start with 2. So how do we explain? So the Gemara says, Eipach. You need to turn around the opposite of what we thought before. We thought Rabbi Yossi was more lenient. We thought Rabbi Yossi said at the end of the day, if you start with 2, it's good. No. But now we're going to move away from that what we thought before. Now we're going to say, right, 2 is out. To begin with, 2 is out. A bundle, in order to be considered a bundle that you have that to start with, you have to have 3. That's the bundle of the Torah. But if you went ahead and you started with the bundle, and now 1 fell out, you're still good. But to be considered a bundle that you fulfilled the requirement, but it had to come from a bundle of 3. So therefore, Rabbi Yossi Shlosha La'akev. Rabbi Yossi says you have to start with 3. And therefore, Rabbi Yossi is the opinion that says to be considered a bundle, you need 3.
Rabbi,
However, the Rabbanan, Shlosha Limitzvah. The Rabbanan hold it's just ideal to start with 3. When the Rabbanan talk about 3, starting with 3 stems of the hyssop grass that's tied together, that's the ideal. But if you went ahead and you started with 2, then also you'll get credit. Right. So according to Rashi, it will be the same disagreement by hyssop will be the same disagreement by Succah. And by the way, it's very important to know who holds what to be able to figure out what the practical halacha would be if we would have followed the laws by hyssop. Usually we'd follow the Rabbanan's opinion. And now we just switched around the Rabbanan's opinion. Now we're saying that the Rabbanan hold 2 is technically considered a bundle by hyssop. It's just ideal to have 3. According to that, it would be a big stringency that by Sukkah, having 2 pieces of wood tied together on top would be considered a bundle and would be invalid according to that opinion.
Rabbi,
So
don't we learn in Masechet Zeraim? In the said there, we learned that a bundle is 2 that are tied. In other words, doesn't the rabbis rule what leket is, what the Zeraim is of what we leave behind if it's tied or not, bundled or not?
Okay, but meanwhile, the Gemara didn't bring that. Okay, maybe.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. Why is it not bringing? Why wouldn't it bring a proof from Zeraim? Is the question, or from another Gemara?
We have to see that case of the Zeraim. The Gemara doesn't bring that case. So the Gemara, okay. unless it's okay. So the Gemara doesn't bring that case. I'm
going to ask the question to another rabbi to find out why it doesn't talk.
No. It's good something. It's good. You have to identify that Mishnah, and then we have to see.
I'm going to get it.
To figure out why the Gemara doesn't answer that question.
I'm going to get the Matzah.
Just text me that Mishnah. Where that Mishnah that you're referring to.
Rabbi, is there anything to learn from Shabbat in terms of the number that would violate a melacha?
When you say a number, meaning.
In other words,
that's also,
I imagine that one of the melachot is you can't bundle things together. I don't know.
Right, very good, by the wood. So there's a malacha of gathering the wood in the field and tying it. So that's a good question also, of piling it up together. So we have to see over there, does it have to do, is it only if you bundle it or not? So that's also a good question to look into.
That's a great question.
Okay, so that's a good point also. We have the Mekoshesh Eitzim. We had recently the guy who was Machal al Shabbat.
Last week.
Exactly what made me think of it. Mekoshesh.
Very good.
What
excellent.
Qualifies as, even though we don't know exactly what Mekoshesh is, right?
Right. There's different opinions. What was the sin? One opinion said that he carried 4 amot in Reshut HaRabim. Some say, there's different opinions exactly what the sin, how he was Machal al Shabbat. Okay, so we'll look into. I'm going to look up that Mishnah.
Rabbi, it's only in Sukkah, Daf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph. Bundle running on Shabbat. Bundle for skach. Bundles are only. But
that's for our Gemara about bundles for skach. That's our discussion.
It doesn't bring any other ones. I'm in the Mafteach. You know this book? It's called the Mafteach.
Yes. Okay. So we're good, Mr. Silverman. So we're good. We don't have any questions from the Gemara's Re'im.
No, we're good.
Okay, have a great day, everybody.
It brings sotah of bundles of grapes.
Okay, very good. Have a great day, everybody.
Great day, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi.
All right, have a great day, guys.
All the best, everybody.
Succah.
Bye-bye.